This is The Stuff Dreams Are Made Of. I'm writer-collector Ryan Condal.
And I'm writer-collector Dave Mandel. Hey, Ryan, we're back.
We are back. Welcome back from your vacation.
Yeah, we took a little break. Sorry, everyone, but needed a little spring break here at the Stuff Dreams Are Made Of, or at least spring break for me. You had a little. Did you have a little break?
We did, not as much as I had hoped, but yeah, we got away a little bit. But you were gone, and that was good.
Yeah, no, I
not that it was good that
batteries.
You were gone.
No, I recharged my batteries. I stepped away from the world of props for a week or so, which I feel like is going to really bring a really exciting new perspective to this show. I think it's really going to help all of us. So thank you, the listeners.
Did it cure the sickness? Are you all better now?
I don't know. No. And the great thing about a great vacation, it was one of those wonderful vacations where I was gone for like less than a week, but it felt like I was gone forever. And then I was back for about 5 minutes and it felt like I'd never left. So that's always what you're looking for, vacation wise. Yeah. Alrighty, Stuff Dreams Are Made Of fans. You know, we like to talk a lot about my comic art collection on the show from time to time, and we've got a new sponsor. Athenaeum Comic Art is an exciting new original comic art website representing some of the best cartoonists in the business. They specialize in independent and small press artists, so we're not necessarily talking about your Marvel and your DC, but your cool indie stuff, such as Eisner Award-winning Tilly Walden, Ignatz Award-winning artist Noah Van Sciver, and Casey Nowick and New Yorker cartoonist Emma Hunsiger. Athenaeum Comic Art gives fans an opportunity to own an original page of art, just like I have in my collection, from their favorite comics and support the artists that they love.
And as an exclusive first announcement for the Stuff Dreams Are Made Of fans, Athenaeum Comic Art will soon be selling original pages from Tilly Walton's upcoming graphic novel, Clementine, which is a graphic novel from the Walking Dead universe. So don't miss on your chance to own one of a kind piece of history. Please check out their website, athenaeumcomicart.com, and type in the code DREAMS at the checkout to receive free shipping on your first order, and let them know that you listen to our podcast. Again, the website is athenaeumcomicart.com. And the code is DREAMS. That's ATHENAEUM comicart.com. And the code is DREAMS.
I was just going to say, I've been checking out this site ever since I found out about them. The stuff is just really, really cool. They have a lot of really interesting artists. Some I knew, some I didn't know, which is always kind of fun for me. And so I found myself not only looking at the art, but also like writing down books to check out that I've then now bought, which, then of course, good for them, will lead to me buying more stuff. And the only thing I'll say about these Walking Dead graphic novels is, we talk a lot about markets on things. The Walking Dead stuff just does not stop. Walking Dead comic art just has gone crazy over these last few years. Props too. And boy, I am always shocked by it, but never surprised, I guess. Check it out. Athenaeum. Tell Sean Watkins, who, believe it or not, has a PhD. He owns the store and he has a PhD, which just seems like, I'm guessing his parents, when they were told he has a PhD and he owns his own comic art gallery, they must have been very, very proud of the money that they spent on that PhD. So check that out. It has made my list of comic art places that I'm checking out every week. So please join me in checking them out. athenaeumcomicart.com. But we got an exciting show. Let's dig into it with what's new in props. And I've got something that I was we texted about it, which was how exciting it was. And I guess for me, it was because it kind of came out of nowhere, which is an auction house called Potter and Potter that I have sort of, I guess, followed a little bit because they've done things like magic auctions and like circus auctions, which, as you know, are big parts of my collection, or really aren't and shouldn't be, but I keep looking to buy more things. Yeah.
Monkeys tend to show up in both magic and circuses.
I have looked at a lot of good circus posters with gorillas on it. I will say they have an upcoming auction, and in the auction they have a a set of coveralls that say Ringling Brothers on the back of them coming up in an auction. I really want to just have those and work those into my regular wardrobe. I think just to have a pair of Ringling Brothers circus, they're just
Yeah.
like, they're worker coveralls, but I think that would be a great thing to own. So thinking about that, don't bid
It moves
against
you
me.
further
Yeah.
along your arc to actually working with monkeys. Like as you
Exactly, or at least the
slowly
ability to sneak in. If Ringling Brothers was still existing, I'd be able to sneak in. But magic
be
stuff
near
too.
them.
Anyway, really very cool auction house. But all of a sudden, out of the blue, and I sent it to you. On May 12th, they are doing a what they're calling a Matrix auction, and it's either
Yeah.
one or both of the Wachowskis is selling stuff, and it's really impressive. It's worth checking out at Potter and Potter auctions. There's good stuff in there. There's stuff from all the Matrix movies, from all their films. It's a little light on certain movies, but there's things. There's definitely representation from
Yes.
V. There's representation from Speed Racer. There's posters and that kind of stuff. It's very heavy on what's the Jupiter movie? Is that
Jupiter Ascending
Jupiter Ascending? There's a bunch of that kind of stuff,
and
and there's a
Cloud
bunch of
Atlas
Cloud
too.
Atlas, which is a
Hmm.
movie that I don't know if I would need anything from it, but that's a movie I enjoy that one. It's strange but interesting to me. Again, not sure I'm buying anything, but very cool. And then stuff from the Matrix movies, all three Matrix movies, including some really neat maquettes of the Sentinel. I don't know. It was just I don't know. I
Yeah.
was really, to me, and again, I don't know anything, one or both of the Wachowskis, again, we're not sure who's selling what, must be buying from Potter and Potter. They must be either circus or magic people, that this is where they've chosen to sell their stuff, which again this is based on nothing. This is just a guess. But it's not necessarily the place I would think to sell my props, but it's a very cool prop auction. That was my take.
Hmm.
For what it's worth. Anything hitting you that you, as you were
Yeah,
looking through it?
it was really neat. I mean, look, I loved the original Matrix. That was definitely, 1999 generally was a big year for me as I was learning how to be a screenwriter, because that was probably the first year that I sat down and tried to write something. I was in college
And you
and
were
I had gone.
9, right? You were 9 years old that year, right?
Correct. Yeah, but and I was in college because I was a little behind for for the condols. It was a little bit of disappointment to my parents, but no, I that was the year that I
Because
really started paying.
that was the year I turned 50. Anyway, go
Yeah,
on.
yeah, yeah. It's all fine. It's all fine. Let me tell you the comic books that I was reading in 1999. They
Please.
really, really delight
Venom
you.
and
Really impress you. Love Venom and Carnage too. It's all good. But I that was the year that I really started paying a lot of attention to kind of grown up movies. In 1999, classically, it was such a great year. Matrix, Fight Club, American Beauty, Sixth Sense was that year. I mean, it was just a wonderful year to be paying attention and going to the movie theater. And I just remember the Matrix, like, we sound like Statler and Waldorf here, talking about the good old days, but 1999, I mean, the internet existed, but nobody's watching trailers on it. So if you saw The Matrix, maybe you had caught like the television spot that aired during the Super Bowl. I think everybody kind of saw that. But if you were in the kitchen getting a beer, you just didn't see it. So a lot of people just showed up in the theater having no idea what they were going in for, myself kind of included. I was really intrigued
no,
by the.
it was honest to God buzz. I mean, it was honest
Yes.
to God, like, what was that? What is this thing? Did you see that trailer? Oh my
Yeah.
God, I know someone that saw it. They said we're not going to believe it. Oh my God, I did see it. Oh my God, I got to go see it again. I mean, it was, yeah,
Yeah.
it doesn't exist nowadays.
No, no, it's
Yeah.
really hard to hit that. It changed cinema. I mean, science fiction movies were different after the Matrix than they were before, because that was the thing that everybody was then chasing and trying to do. And it was this really impactful seminal moment. But I think oddly, as much as it affected me, certainly as a writer and as a cinema fan, I think I was too old at that point for it to really make me like need to own a bunch of stuff from the movie, because it just imprinted on me in a different way, in a different place and
Oh,
time.
that's funny
So
because for me it was such a just like both awe-inspiring and kind of like, what was that? Like, were you I don't know. I mean, again, I don't think I was sitting there going, "This is changing movies," but certainly, as you put it certainly did change movies, but it really just hit me as this is one of just the greatest things I've ever seen. I mean, I do like I said, I can viscerally remember both, and I think I told this story once, going to try and see it, and literally it was sold out at Century City, and then having to go back to go and see it, like on a Wednesday night or something, where you could actually get in. And again,
Yeah.
you just don't
Another
think about
experience you
going to
don't have.
movies like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Um, and I just, it's a movie I have always loved. I have a couple of pieces in my collection, which I have a Sentinel maquette that I bought out of a
Oh, that's
charity
cool.
auction many years ago. It's not posed. The ones in this auction are a little sort of a little more posed and sort of tearing apart the ships. Mine is just a sort of a free form one with the tentacles that I do love. And it came when I got it. I came with a. I think I've mentioned this before on the show. Jeff Darrow, who is one of the concept,
Yes.
not necessarily. I don't know if he was a conceptual. I think he was a conceptual artist, but it was certainly also a storyboard artist on it as well, and a really great guy, and the creator or co-creator of Hard Boiled, and the
Yeah.
creator of Shaolin
Fantastic artist.
Cowboy, and just an incredible
Yeah.
artist, and a really good guy. I have he a drawing of that he did as well, and I think I have a T-shirt design. I think I mentioned this as well for a Matrix crew shirt that he did, a big like kung fu crowd fight, which he's very well known for. So I have a couple of Matrix pieces, and I've thought about other Matrix pieces. It's one that I don't know. For me, it makes my list of I like really do like having stuff from it, and look, I'm a little bit like other people. I did not like the follow-up movies. Some of them have parts. There's an interesting piece in the book, in the auction, which is there's a notebook, not a notebook, a binder of like diagrams, maps, and I guess just like stuff relating to the freeway chase from the second movie, which I'm not a huge fan of the second movie, but the freeway chase
Is
is to
incredible.
me just
Yeah.
incredible. And I don't necessarily want to own it, but I wish I could look through and just see what the freeway stuff looks like. Just because they shot that on a real piece of freeway that they had rebuilt after the earthquake up in Oakland. And so they basically had a giant freeway that they were able to, a couple of miles they were able to shoot on before it opened. And like I've made movies, I've directed, I've written. My brain does not work to like I can't think of how you would even begin to shoot something like that freeway. You know what I mean? Like I just
Yeah.
my head doesn't work that way, and I would just enjoy the blow by blow of it. Anyway, it's a very cool auction. I have to say the gun. I don't know what I can't remember. It has a name,
The
but they've
lightning
got
gun.
the lightning gun from the first
Yeah.
episode, from the first
From the
movie
actual
is
real
in there.
world.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And it's in there, and I thought that caught my eye among other things. But that was one I will definitely be following, which was very cool. A couple other what's news in props, and I don't know if you've read this yet, but I wanted to sort of throw a shout out in there. Some of my vacation reading was this wonderful making of book about Fury Road by
Yes, I
Kyle
just
Buchanan. Did you pick
I
that up
I'm
yet?
I'm moving my way through a medieval history book that I'm reading for
Are you reading
show
that for work?
research.
Yep.
Yeah. And I'm forcing myself to finish that so that I can begin. I'm like 50 pages from the end. It's very
Well,
good. It's just
I was going to say it's
it's
called Blood,
history.
Sweat, and Chrome: The Wild and
Yeah, I'm
True Story
excited
of
about
Mad
it.
Max Fury Road by Kyle Buchanan. Um, it's a real soup to nuts everything. It has all the wonderful, gossipy stuff about, the crazy stuff that went on between Tom Hardy and Charlize Theron and all that kind of stuff. But it is in the trenches with the craftsmen on this movie and the people building the cars and the props. And one of the things that's in there that really I thought our listeners would really appreciate, they talk about the building of the props, and as they're designing and building them, there's this sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Sort of an ethos behind it all that I guess Miller wanted, which is everything had to have a story. Like, why are you building this? What is the story? And that's why everything is very sort of handcrafted and made out of other things, lots of found parts. But what is the story? And then the characters themselves were often like brought in and been shown like when you leave, like the girls, when they leave, you're allowed to each grab one thing. What's going to be your item? And they were given like, here's all these things. Tell me what you want to take with you, but also why you want to take it. And that
That's great.
meaning, if you will, that was part of the prop building and the prop selection really comes through in that movie. And it's really wonderful to read about. So it's not specifically about all the props, but this philosophy behind the props. I thought our listeners would get a real kick out of that. And it's just it's a great book. Yeah.
That's wild. Yeah, I can't wait to read that one. I mean, talk about another movie where you watch it, as a fan, and your brain can't process how the hell
Yes.
they pulled those. I mean,
by the way,
Soderbergh said, "I don't know how no one
yeah.
died making this movie," which is famously.
It's insane, and there are moments in it where you're just like, they're like, this is insane. Like, it's a wild sort of description. And by the way, it falls into that category for me of, again, obviously at this point, not super recent, but a more recent movie. I wasn't a young kid, but Fury Road is a movie I collect on. We've talked about that. I think we've shown our listeners my Max face mask thing.
Yeah, it's great.
And there, like The Matrix, it really for me was again, I don't think I'm saying anything original, but for me, it was one of those game-changing movies where I do feel like I need to own something from that movie, and now do. And those movies are few and far between that make me sort of, break my rules, my nostalgia rules, or whatever you want to say. Because there's no monkeys in that movie. There are no monkeys to be seen, just to be really, if you haven't seen it lately, there are no monkeys.
Very, very few. Yeah. There is a doof warrior, though. So.
There is, who is monkey-esque, but
yes.
Yeah, anyway, highly recommend it in the sort of make it part of the Stuff Dreams Are Made Of book club.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I think two future episodes. I think I want to kind of, because I don't have anything from Fury Road, and I would love to do an episode for you and I, just do like, that comes up from time to time, but do a specific episode about like gaps and holes in our collection and things that we need to have and don't have or haven't quite figured out. Or, I have this little thing from this film, but I really need a centerpiece, a major piece from the film. And the other thing I want to do is, because you and I read this stuff all the time, because we're constantly doing the Dave and Ryan book club, is there is so much wonderful writing done about, maybe not about props, but about the one step away.
But props are often a huge part of it. I mean, again, this is not necessarily, they do talk
the
about
making
things.
of,
yes, exactly,
and the production design and the theory behind it, and the costume design and the theory behind it, and costumes of books and the art of books and things like that. And there's just a lot of great books out there that I think Dave and I have in our library, and some that you would know and others less known. I think it would just be really fun to do an episode on that, just like open the library and talk about the books that we have that we use as reference or inspiration or whatever, and go through a couple of those, and maybe bring.
I like that. We'll do a book club. We'll do a book club episode. Maybe we'll get an author. We're gonna get an author. Dare I say? If anyone listening is an author, write us.
Yes, of making of books. If you're Jonathan Franzen, we know you listen to the podcast. We're just not interested.
Oh, Franzen cannot get enough of us. I'll tell you that.
That's true.
He loves this. He loves it. Big nerdy collector, Franzen. So, and a reminder, dare I say, please write us, as always, at what's our email, Ryan?
Dreams Are Made Of Podcasts @gmail.com.
Please write us, send us your questions. We want to know what's on your mind. And speaking of emails, we thought tonight we would be, or today, I guess, your night, my day.
Well, can I do my what's new in props first?
Oh, you have a what's new in props? Did I screw you over? I'm sorry. Go ahead. We can just edit that. No, just go. Right. Yeah. Or don't edit. Just leave it.
Yeah. No, I was going to do.
I did. Just let the record show. I literally just got up. So anyway, go on.
Yeah. It's fine. It's fine. It's on the record. No, so what's new this week? I have a bunch of defeats this week. There was a bunch of stuff that I was following in the heritage art auctions that we had talked about. There was a cool comic art auction that went this week, that where a bunch of interesting stuff passed through and sold. I chased a bunch of it. I struck out on everything. There was that Frazetta Conan piece in there that I actually chased pretty high, and I ended up being the underbidder on it. But I just didn't ultimately, at the level that it went for, I didn't love the piece enough.
I thought that's what you said that was the best thing you said, which was, while you did chase it, I think, higher than you originally thought you were going to, you hit the brakes at some point, which I think was great because it wasn't your be all end all. And, again, we talk a lot
Yeah.
about money on this show, or we try not to, but we end up doing. And again, as these things, as these numbers are not just, it's not fake money, it's real money. And as these numbers get more significant on whether it's a prop, a piece of comic art, a monkey radiator cover, whatever it is, you have to know what your limit is. You have to know, how do you value it? And I guess the honest answer is will you be happy when it all is said and done if you break your bank? And later on, will you regret it? And these are things you really do have to ask yourself on any piece of collecting, because I think you can very quickly ruin collecting for yourself if you are overreaching and left staring at stuff where you're just going like, why did I spend this money on? I think it's the quickest way to sort of taking the fun out of collecting. I sort of, I thought you did a great job of sort of hitting those brakes or pumping the
Yeah,
brakes.
yeah, a little discipline in there, just because I know that eventually it might not be a Conan piece, which I've sort of resigned myself to, but eventually there will be a Frazetta that comes along that is something that I do want to chase, and to a much, I think, higher level, but something that's worth it to me to do, and I want to be patient, because the other thing is I also have this wonderful Frazetta sketch that would fit into the similar category in terms of level of finish that I got a couple of years ago that our mutual friend Kelvin kind of sourced for me and hooked me up with, and it's great, and it's a saber-toothed tiger kind of scaring this big bird of prey, and it's two beasts. It's Frazetta. The tiger actually has a nice level of finish to it, and it was much cheaper. I just really love the piece, so I have something at that level. I want something that's, as we've talked about
Right.
before,
You
just much
have
more finished.
you have a lovely placeholder piece. And I feel like, had you gotten that piece, let's say you got it, let's say you went one more bid and you won it. And then a month from now, the next heritage, the next whatever, an art dealer shows up with whatever the piece that is the dream piece. I think, this is the other side of it. I think you're in a foul place there too, where all of a sudden now something has shown itself that you really do want. And you're not only looking back on this piece that you spent a lot of money for, but let's say you then decide, okay, now I got to go sell this thing. Maybe it's too soon. Maybe the special circumstances of you and the other guy bidding to get it, it doesn't go for that number. It's just, again, to go back to some of our basic tenets that we talked about, like back in the first show, when you're going into a sort of auction mode, it is great to kind of pre-auction really write down your numbers. Like, where are you going to go to? Maybe there's a little bit of breakage, of like a couple of more bids over it, but really take the time to write down what your limit is, and maybe in a parentheses what your real limit is. I mean, however, yourself, like,
Yeah.
right, but find those numbers and give yourself a plan to stick to, because it just, no good comes from overpaying for something you don't love. If you love it and you decide, I have to have it, I gotta have it, I gotta go a little crazy, hey, I get it, but there is this darker downside. Anyway, again, I thought kudos to you. I didn't get anything either. I bid on a couple of things, and again, I don't know if there was things I liked, things I was interested in, but just kind of all the numbers, kind of for what they were, they kind of flew
Yeah.
by. I did notice that our friend Jimmy Willis, who was on for our
The movie
movie
art
art
episode.
episode, picked up this wonderful Bob Peak unused Time magazine Godfather piece,
Yes.
which I was
Yeah,
interested in as well. I think you were interested in a little
we
bit as
looked.
well. I didn't end up, it went sort of past what I thought. Jimmy ended up with it. So congratulations, Jimmy Willis. And he actually posted it on his Comic Art Fans website, which you can check it out there. And it's a great piece, and we're very happy for him. Friend of the show, Jimmy Willis.
Yes.
So yeah, that
Yes.
was pretty cool.
Yeah. I also chased. I kind of lightly chased. I didn't really, hunt and pursue. There was a wonderful Bill Sienkiewicz piece. It was an early Sienkiewicz that was a Blade Runner something. I don't know. It seemed like he would have been super young to actually do a comp for the original poster. It was a comp or a prelim or something in that, but fairly well finished, really tight and nicely done. and just really cool imagery from the film. And I really liked it. And I love Bill and his work, and I have a couple of his pieces, and I was interested in it at a certain level, so I threw a bid in, and then I just walked away, and it went for like 3 times what I put the
Yeah,
bid in. So at the end, I was just
it
sort of
went
like, well,
really crazy for an
yeah,
unpublished, not
right,
quite sure what it is piece. Again, absolutely effing gorgeous. I mean, Bill's
yeah.
work is incredible. It's an incredible piece. It is, what's the word? It's everything you'd want in a Blade Runner piece, but I don't know what it was, but the number was baffling
But unpublished.
to
And
me.
I
Yeah.
also, if I didn't have any Blade Runner art, it might have been a different situation. But I have my pencil prelim from
Yeah,
the
you're John
original,
Alvin. Yeah.
the John Alvin one sheet. So it didn't make sense for me to go that high, and so I kind of lost. So anyway, so it was a week of sort of defeats, but all fine, because you're always building the war chest for that next thing, and we have the summer of auctions is coming up. There's going to be a bunch of big
Summer of
auctions,
auctions. Yeah. And now
and
Matrix auctions to add into
Matrix
the
auction.
summer of
Yeah,
auctions. Yeah.
we'll talk about all that stuff as it comes down the pike. But it's always nice to have cash in the reserve for when that big surprise thing that you do really want and will break the bank for comes along. But I did pick up a small piece that was a victory that I didn't have to bid any against anybody for, which I really enjoyed, and it is I got a sling from Aliens.
Oh,
So
yes. You sent me the picture of that. That's gorgeous. Yeah.
which is amazing, and it's something that I've wanted for years and years, and I've actually paired it up, put it on my my stunt pulse rifle that I have out here. So the slings in Aliens were all made the same way, and they use them on kind of all the military hardware. So the pulse rifles, the flame incinerators, the flame units,
Right. They were
and
interchangeable basically, but
correct,
they have
and
a
the
very unique look to them, which is kind
yes,
of cool.
the
Yeah.
motion tracker, and they were all custom made, and the thinking was they were made out of like seat belts, possibly, because if you look at it, it looks kind of like that seatbelt material. But there's a bunch of interesting features to it. It's really nice, and it pluses up the piece. And eventually, the plan will be that I will reunite this with my Hero pulse rifle, and which is a piece that we've talked a lot about here. But it's just rare, I think, to find an original piece that pluses up something you already have, and does it in a big way. And this was really nice, because these are actually, you'd think that there were a lot of them, in theory there are, but there's actually more hardware out there than there are slings. So kind of everybody wants one, but they're really hard to come by because there aren't enough to go around for the people
Yeah,
that
they
have.
definitely, it's so funny. They must have come from like a different department, so to speak. And I
Right.
don't know, maybe if they were, I don't know. It's funny, like maybe just a different area of the prop department, but somehow the prop weapons got out without the slings, and the
Yeah.
slings have never gotten
It
out,
might have been
which is just kind of
might
funny.
have been
Yeah.
props. I mean, the
Yeah.
slings might have been props, and the weapons might have been. I don't know how it worked back then. I mean, we talked about previously. Even the incinerators were special effects, and the guns were armory. So even those were different departments. So somebody was making all the slings and then supplying them to different departments.
Yeah,
So
it is a funny departmental thing where you would think the sling, a sort of small minor thing, would be plentiful and the guns would be hard to find, and vice versa is true, which is kind of neat.
right,
But either way, a really sort of neat addition, and I agree, there are those, and again, not every prop has it, because obviously it depends on the prop, but there is something nice where you get the holster for the gun, the scabbard for the sword, you know what I mean, like
yeah,
the piece that goes with the piece, and it does add another dimension to it, I think, in a great way. Yeah.
yes, agreed. So just a reminder to continue to email us at dreamsaremadeofpodcasts@gmail.com. We're going to continue taking listener questions. We thought tonight we would actually do the thing that we promised to be doing, which is taking listener questions and answering some of those things that we have tried to take pains along the way to answer the questions that come our way the most we can, as often as we can. But we figured it would be fun to share some of the things that had come through and kind of answer them publicly here on the podcast, so that people could benefit from our vast well of wisdom that Dave and I share, and go through and hear hear
Yeah,
the things
and
that
I
people
should
are
add,
thinking about.
these were gathered wonderfully by Bart Taylor, who helps us produce the show. And quite honestly, I have not looked at them. You have not looked at them, and so I'm sort of excited just to sort of see and hear and criticize our listeners for their stupid questions.
Yeah.
So I'm very
Yeah.
excited to
But Dave,
do that. Yeah.
I realized in going through this that I went. We had talked about on the previous show when we were pitching for these the great punny names of the comic book
Oh, the old comic book
letters.
letter columns like the
Yeah,
JLA mailbag and whatnot.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah. And
Okay. Yep.
I actually bothered to go look some of them up because we need a Stuff Dreams Are Made Of mailbag name. So instead of Dave and I pitching a bunch of bad prop puns, why don't you do it to us and send in a name, and then we can actually name
I
this thing
had
a thing.
a friend of mine sent one in, or suggested it to me. I shouldn't say sent it in, but just was sort of suggesting the idea. And I believe his idea was rosebuds was
Okay.
the idea for our like letters, like rosebuds, I guess. So I
Oh,
don't
that's
know.
good.
Take that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and if you know the true story behind that name, it makes it even kind of more
The
horrifying.
plural makes it really strange. It makes
Yes.
it makes Marion Davies' anatomy very interesting, and
Yes.
perhaps why why she was so popular
for all the world to see. That's right. But so Amazing Spider-Man was actually called Spider's Web, which I thought it was Web Slingers for something, but for some reason.
By
It
the
was
way, there
Spider's
may
Web.
have been a second Spidey. You know, there were like at some point there were 4 different Spidey books.
Yeah,
It's
like
possible
Web
one
of
of the other. Yeah.
Spider-Man, and and Spectacular, and then just the no adjective Spider-Man and all that. The Fantastic Four was just the Fantastic Four fan page, which I just appreciated. Just direct,
Simple and says it. Yeah.
Thor had hammergrams, which I thought was good.
Now we're talking. Yeah.
Wolverine, cutting edge. Really enjoyed that. Avengers Assemble, it's obvious what book that was for. And then Batman for years and years. I mean, I think from the beginning, because I saw a bunch of different examples through the decades, was Bat Signals, which is kind of perfect for that. So I just I don't know. If you can, we're looking for bad puns sort of in that range. So please send them in.
Or
and we
you know,
will
it doesn't. It can be
read
just
them out on the
an
podcast.
honest to God good name, but we'll come up with a
Yes.
prize of some sort for whoever names our letter column that doesn't exist. But
Yeah, exactly.
we'll figure out a way to make it exist if you come up with a good name for it. So
Send them in.
Yeah, send them in. We will use them.
So should we start reading some of these letters?
Go
Dave?
for it.
Okay, cool.
You want to go first? Hit me with something.
Yeah. So this is from Jeff Manis, and apologies if we pronounce anybody's name wrong. I'm just doing
Manu.
Yeah. I'm doing the most
Jeff Manu. Let's make everybody French today.
Very good. That's a good idea. Jeff Manis has asked, does generational aging follow prop rarity or value? In the last 20 years, have props from the 30s and 40s lost steam, while 70s and 80s props go up as people that carry that 40s nostalgia die off very morbidly, and others grew up at the 70s and 80s, age into disposable income? I think that's a really excellent question. I mean,
I think it's a truism for collecting in general. I mean, I do think that is a big thing where, you know, and again, I think there are lots of exceptions, but in whatever field of collecting, there is definitely that moment where people are collecting something, and then 80 years later, it is not in fashion, it is not in vogue, and it just doesn't have the value. And I do think we are seeing it in the prop world. I mean, we've talked a little bit about sort of the great sort of wardrobe collectors of those 30s and 40s films, you know, sort of like the collection that what's her name, Debbie Reynolds built up. And
Yes.
I think, you know, when she sold that off, you saw some wonderful prices, you know, on the A movies, but on a lot of the just movies people don't remember, those costumes were really going for a steal. And I think people who collected that stuff were very excited to grab it, because all of a sudden, you know, a movie from the 1930s with an incredible, you know, cape, and, you know, some movie about a king of England or something, you know, an incredible costume that probably has intrinsic value, but not a lot of people interested in it, and therefore selling, you know, for $1,000 or so. And so again, I don't want to say it's a worry, because ultimately, you know, collect what you love, but I think certain movies cut through. I think, you know, obviously if you had something from Casablanca, it doesn't matter what year it was. And obviously something from Star Wars, or, you know, something from the Academy Award movies, the significant
Wizard of
movies,
Oz.
I do think those cut through.
Yeah.
But I do think the in and out everyday movie of those time periods definitely do fall out of favor, and certain ideas of collecting do as well. Whereas I think like that kind of grand wardrobe collecting is sort of a little bit less in favor these days anyway, in whereas things are more prop heavy right now than they
Right.
used to be back then. So I do think it's not a concern, but I do think it's something you should know about going into any sort of field of collecting.
Yeah, and we just don't know where this is going to head because right now the 70s and 80s are very hot, but what we're starting to see, so we've seen two trends, one kind of on the downtrend and one kind of on the uptrend. The downtrend is we've seen a lot. There's been a lot of evidence over the last 10 years in particular that 1960s television, which used to be a huge collecting market, has certainly kind of the bloom has come off the rose a bit,
Yeah, I
and
think
that's
where Star Trek is sort of maybe holding a little bit, although even
yeah.
not everything there the same way. When I was starting to get into the prop collecting, the big Star Trek auctions of like I'll say late 90s, early 2000s, that was a material, and now it seems like yes, people are still interested in Kirk and Spock, but the individual episodes, some of those individual props, less so. And I think you're seeing people both sell them off or also just selling them and not getting the numbers that they used to be getting. So yeah, I agree with that. And on the flip side, we're also starting to see, you and I are constantly noticing, I guess, for lack of a better word, newer movies where we're going, I cannot believe whatever that new thing got a crazy number, because it feels like, why would anybody want that? But obviously that's what the new
That's what
collectors
happened.
do
Yeah,
want. Yeah.
I was going to say that 90s and 2000s
Yeah.
movies, have kind of have taken the limelight, and we'll see. I mean, that could, could be, crypto nerds coming in with sudden, found wealth and disposable income, and they're looking to do something. It just, trends could be changing. It could be people speculating. You just don't know, but it seems like we're on to kind of a new, for instance, with all the Back to the Future 2 success in the last auction. I mean, it really outstripped kind of anything else in that auction, including Star Wars, which was always the big, it's not that Star Wars is going for nothing. It's just that Back to the Future was hitting, new multiples of records, whereas Star Wars was kind of holding steady or maybe even down a little bit versus prior years. So it's just something to monitor. We'll see, but certainly Jeff's question is a valid one, and it is something to keep in mind as you're making investments in these things as you go along.
Yeah, great question. Thank you, Jeff. I got one here from Thomas. Well, I'll give him a French read. Esso, probably Thomas Essen.
Yes, very good.
When acquiring an item whose value is heavily tied to a single individual, so and so actor wore this or so and so writer wrote this, do you consider the risk that the individual's reputation could potentially become tarnished by some unpredictable scandal down the road, or do you ascribe to the death of the author philosophy when it comes to the valuing of these artifacts? He sort of brought up an
Is that a
instance of
timely
Kevin
question, Dave?
Spacey. I believe that's the Johnny Depp question.
Yeah.
I guess at the moment. Boy, that's a tough one. I will say, number one, it's not something I've thought a lot about, only because I guess I don't have pieces, I guess, that maybe tie into some of these, I guess, disgraced or whatever
Yeah.
individuals.
You were really disciplined with your Harvey Weinstein
My
collection.
Fatty Arbuckle collection is the finest in the land.
Yeah.
It's really great.
He was
Fatty
framed.
Arbuckle
That
stuff.
he was treated very unfairly by the justice system and popular opinion
The
at the time.
1920s justice system.
Yeah.
Yeah. But look, I guess the honest answer is yeah, I think it does. That's the
Yes.
easiest way I can express it.
Well, here's a question. I mean,
Yeah.
do you think, just being very timely, do you think Will Smith stuff takes a hit in sort of the collecting sphere? I mean, he's been in a bunch of these big genre movies, certainly highly collectible films, all through his career. Do you think there's a hit there right now, which would seem to be the time where it's most problematic versus like 10 years from now?
It's a funny thing. It's a little bit like when some of these days, sometimes when the market dips, and then I'm talking about the stock market for a second, where like the stock
Right.
market dips or crypto dips, And on the one hand, you start to go, oh, wow, look, it's going down. And on the other hand, it's an opportunity for people to pounce and kind of come back in and, buy it at a better rate and drive it up further. And I do think there's a little bit of that with in the prop world, which is to say, look, again, Johnny Depp, or if you're talking about Will Smith, again, I don't know what happens to the I Am Legend props, which is not a movie I think particularly much of. It's fine. I just not something I need to own anything from. But if you're talking about, let's say, a Men in Black prop, yeah, maybe in the immediate period it does take a hit, but at the same time, I think if a great Men in Black prop showed itself and it was sort of a little bit down because of what's going on, which it might be, I think it's an opportunity for somebody else to just go, fuck it, it's still Men in Black, and kind of grab it
Right.
and make up for whatever that is. So I do think it is certainly possible, and I think it affects, like everything else, I think it affects the B and C examples more strongly, meaning I think, like, again, Johnny Depp, Will Smith, whatever. And again, these are not, I have no opinion. Well, I actually have opinions, but I'm just simply saying these are the people are talking about right now. The questionnaire, Thomas brought up Kevin Spacey and what
Sure.
some of his stuff. And I guess what I would say is, I think on the Men in Blacks, on the Pirates of the Caribbean, I don't think it does. But if you then start going down to the, I don't know, whatever other weird Johnny Depp movie, I think you might start to run into more trouble down there on the far end of the
Hmm.
spectrum, I guess.
The
So
Ninth
yeah,
Gate, actually, one of my
I hope Ninth Gate stuff becomes more valuable.
yeah,
I can just
yeah, a
grab some,
list
or
on
it
my
goes
list of
cheap. Yeah, I'd love to buy
holes and
something from
gaps.
that. I'm not sure. It's tough. Again, I do have examples. I do have a Men in Black piece. It's not specifically tied to Will Smith, but it is tied to the Men in Black. It doesn't bother me. I can think of things that would bother me. So I don't know. It definitely would affect me on some level. I don't know if it affects the market. Like I said, I think it does on the lower end. So we'll see. Yeah.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. Like I also think I not to split hairs, but I think it also depends on the what was done, and I mean, it feels ultimately to me like this is something that will recover from. There will be apologies and make wells and talk shows and whatever that go on and things like that, because because of what it was a snap incident in a moment. And I don't think it's not indicative of a long history of behavior, at least not yet. I mean, we have no idea where this all heads, but it's my feeling that no, in this case, that Men in Black will be just fine and remains highly collectible. But we shall see how all that's. But it's also something to certainly think about when you are collecting. I mean, these things are emotional investments, and there are emotions on both sides. So you have to be careful, and you have to also just have to buy what you love. Don't buy cynically. Buy what you love, and then it shouldn't matter whether
I
value
will
dips up and
say,
down over time.
and this connects to it a little bit, which is do your best. I mean, I know people want to, like, meet famous people and all that kind of stuff, but this does speak to don't meet anybody. It is so much easier. Like, there was just a story, Will Wheaton, who played Wesley Crusher, is selling, like, I guess, a biography, and has stories in there of, like, William Shatner being kind of an a-hole to him. And, I've heard those kinds of stories, whatever. And
Yeah.
I don't know, they're true, they're not true. I mean, I do think obviously whatever Will Wheaton is saying is most likely true. And I'm sure William Shatner can be a difficult guy. I sort of find I can still collect on William Shatner, Captain Kirk, and Star Trek, but at the same time, what would bother me is, like, if I ever, like, stood in line for his autograph or a photo or something, and if he were mean to me, I will simply say, I would
Yeah.
probably ruin it
If he
for
told
me.
you to get a
Yeah.
life.
Yes, well, or just even, like, whatever, just was just an a-hole about it, or I don't know, mean to
Yeah.
my kids or something. And I'm
Yeah.
not saying he would be, but he's having a bad day or whatever it is, and it just seems like it's a lot easier just not to meet him and not have to then get rid of my Star Trek stuff than to go to the trouble to meet him.
Yes.
So, a big believer in
Yes.
just not meeting your
Uh,
idols.
I
Yeah,
would say
yeah.
that's good advice. Although I have met Will Smith, I actually worked with him for a little while for something he was producing, and I was writing a script with him, and he was just an absolute delight. And I just really, really loved the guy and found him to be incredibly like real and feet on the ground. And we had history. You know, he grew up in Philadelphia. I went to school in Philadelphia. We talked a lot about Philadelphia. Just really, really liked the guy. So you just never know when you're going to catch somebody. But
It should also be
don't
pointed
meet William
out,
Shatner.
you enjoy being slapped, which is that's your kink, if you will.
Yes, I mean, it's my list of celebrities that have. I mean, the Rock has slapped me multiple
That's
times.
your hall pass, right? You're allowed to be slapped by
yes.
certain celebrities.
Disclaimer: The Rock has never slapped me. He doesn't even know who I am. Shall we move on?
Yes.
How does the degree of fantasy? This is a follow-on question from Thomas Essen. How does the degree of fantasy / removal from reality on the one hand and the degree of precise replication of reality on the other affect your attraction to props? He's asking about
I'm so confused. Yeah, please.
He's asking about is it more valuable to collect something from say Lawrence of Arabia versus All the President's Men? Meaning this I think that's not actually a great example. I mean, I think it would be
Is
like
it more
Lawrence
like
of Arabia
versus
Dune,
like, right?
You know?
Well, we've talked about the part of like, suits are suits, sometimes wardrobe is wardrobe and props are props, which is, I don't know, it's less fun. It really, I mean, for me, it's less fun, but there are real world props that are very specific, that are great moments of movies that are equally incredible. So I don't think there's a rule. I don't know. That's my gut instinct.
Look, I think generally you're just in a better place when the thing that you are trying to buy and collect on is custom made and it's specific to that world. And obviously, if you're buying something from Star Wars, all that stuff was completely custom done for that, generally for that world. So you're going to have something that's more bespoke and more specific to that time and place. Whereas if you're buying something from All the President's Men, it's most likely to be, even if it was a custom made suit, it's a custom made suit that's a replica of a style that was from that period. So it's harder to place it. It's harder. Dave, you always talk about, I always love this. Does it pass the mom test? Like when basically when Dave's mom walks into the room, is she going to look at that thing and know that that's Lawrence of Arabia's costume from Lawrence of Arabia? Or is she going to know that that's Robert Redford's suit from All the President's Men? I mean, and this is a generalization, but these are some of the questions that you want to ask yourself as you're spending, especially if you're going to spend
but I do think
lots and lots of money on something.
But I do think in these real world movies, just to sort of obsess on reality, I do think you can find sort of props and things that are made. So, for example, and I think I've talked about having won this, but I have from Marathon Man, I have one of the tins of fake diamonds that that Laurence Olivier comes to America for. And while obviously the tin is a tin and the fake diamonds are obviously fake diamonds, there is something about sort of those two things being put together, and the tin, it is a real world item, but it is very unique, ergo very memorable. I guess I think there is a specificity that makes these things more memorable, that makes them more interesting to me as props and collectibles, as opposed to, let's simply say, from the same movie, one of the books that Dustin Hoffman has in the library, even one of the books like that he sort of, is, like using, that's the easiest way I can express it. And it's definitely, I don't know, it's not a slippery slope, but it's just, there are definitely pieces where I'm uninterested, even though they are what they are. That's the easiest way. It's sort of when set dressing overlaps into the prop world, I'm a little less interested unless the prop gets a moment. And so maybe we're really talking about how the prop is used in the story on a larger level than just reality versus fantasy a little bit. Like I feel like I'm more interested when things are handled and used in a story or have a story moment. And
That's
I do
true.
feel like those pieces, therefore, ergo, are often more bespoke or made or modified or something as well. Or, you know what I mean? Like they sort of, there's a chicken and the egg to the whole thing. I don't know. That's my thought on it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean that's I mean I think that's totally valid, and but I would also say in counterpoint that your tin of diamonds for Marathon Man is probably something that was at least in some way custom done for that film.
It is, but I do think it
So
is an old just tin. It's not a
yeah,
fake. They
is there
didn't
a label
hand.
on it? Is it
There's
like
yeah, it's like
a
a
tuna
yes, it's a
can or
tin of
something?
something. Yes, no, there is it is a tin, and
See,
so
yeah,
I think someone definitely, again, I've been in this world having on White House Plumbers, we're dealing with the 1970s, and so at some point, there is a moment of I'm looking at 10 carry-on bags for a specific scene that like there's some money payoffs and I'm trying to pick the one that I think is interesting and memorable, but at the end of the day it's just they're picked up at a secondhand store, and then we focus in on it and we use it and it becomes an important prop, but it is just simply off the shelf of one of those places, which is very different than you made a sword on your thing. And so
yeah.
again, there are 70s props that are more key in White House Plumbers than perhaps other props that just are background and used. And again, I do think it gets into the how they're used and how the story kind of, I don't know, pivots on them a little bit. So I do think
I
there's
will
a
say though
connection there.
that
Yeah.
we have some of the very finest 1970s swords are in House of the Dragon. So
Some of the carry-on swords.
yes, correct.
You used to
That's
be
right.
able to smoke and bring swords onto airplanes. I don't know if people
Yeah,
know
just like
that,
Kill
right?
Bill.
Yeah, pre 9/11. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Uh, should we move on? Shall we move
yes.
on? Good
Let's
question
see.
though. Thank you,
Yeah,
Thomas.
very good question. This is from Jack Proctor or Procte. Um, I really
Jacques
enjoy
Proctor.
Jacques Proctet. I really enjoy when you chat about props and memorabilia. That's it. No, I really enjoy when you chat about props memorabilia that are MIA, either completely lost or the whereabouts rumored. I'd love to hear an episode focusing exclusively on that, either discussing some sought after props that haven't been seen since production, or those that disappeared sometimes after, or even those that were lost forever in incidents, accidents during production, or later on. And on that note, a question. So, by the way, we'll stop there a second. I do think that's a great idea for
Yeah,
an
it is a great idea.
episode. So we will add that to the list. I don't know what we call that. MIA maybe, or
Yeah,
yeah.
missing in action.
And on that note, a question I'd be keen to hear the answer to if you're chatting about this on the show. What's the one prop that you would love to own of those that are currently MIA? Well,
Hmm.
maybe we should save that perhaps for that episode, but I think we can
Yeah.
try and answer that at least for the moment. Do you have an MIA that definitely jumps out at you?
I mean, the one that has always stood out to me, which just is fascinating, is where the hell is Obi-Wan Kenobi's lightsaber from the first Star Wars film?
Sure.
It's just such a
That's a
bizarre thing
biggie.
that
I was
because
my head went right to lightsaber, which of course it does on every one of
yeah,
these questions, but this
yes,
time it's
that's
actually
we know what
useful.
you're
Yeah.
thinking. So I jumped in just so that I could have it and not you this time. But that I love that design. Any replica nerd that is worth his salt or her salt knows that replica to even to build that replica, build an Obi-Wan lightsaber hilt from A New Hope. It costs thousands of dollars now because of the rare pieces that go into the building of that. It's like there's an English World War II grenade. There's a cylinder head, which I think is the rarest thing from a Rolls Royce from like a Halifax engine, and it's like I think it's actually a valve head from that action. There's like a countersink handle. There's a heat sink thing in it at the
A lot of
bottom. It's
people don't
like
know that. I think actually the most expensive piece is there's a monkey radiator cap that you don't get to ever really see the monkey. It's
that's
inverted, but it's the
that's
bottom
true.
of the
That's
lightsaber.
true.
But go
Dave
on, yeah.
has 30 of them. But yeah, it's just really interesting because it's all found pieces, and there's actually a Graflex clamp on that, the clamp from Luke's lightsaber. It's like 4 or 5 found pieces, but they're all kind of really hard to find and find in good condition and all that. And now replica heads know what they are. So anyway, so that for me, just knowing how these things are done, that lightsaber was made of a bunch of off the shelf things that were valueless at the time. So who's breaking that thing down? I believe the guns were broken down after filming because the armorers wanted their guns back to go and make, different
Right.
movies, not realizing what Star Wars was
That
going to be.
saber did not go back to Bapti.
No,
They didn't put the
no.
grenade back on the shelf.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it's not in the archive. So where is it? And it's always bothered me. And it things have shown up over time. They always turn out to be a replica, not not quite what it is. So in theory, that one could actually still be out there somewhere, but we just don't know. So that one's always haunted / bothered /
I
intrigued me.
always
What
like to
about you,
think
Dave?
that I always like to think that stuff is out there. I mean, that
Me
sounds
too.
silly, but I do like to think. I do like to think it's all out there. I just um, boy, I don't know. I was thinking about wasn't there that great story about like a the Ghostbuster like ghost packs that like went missing, or one
Oh
was
yeah, the one
destroyed on a tarmac or
the
something
one
like
that
that?
was somebody had it in their luggage, and it went under the plane, and it vanished. It like
Yeah.
it never showed up in O'Hare Airport or whatever, and it was gone, and I don't think has ever emerged. And maybe I don't know, moldings of it emerged later, which suggests that somebody had it
Has
and
it somewhere?
didn't
Yeah,
say
exactly.
anything. Yeah, there was
That's a
and
story that always comes to mind of just
that's a
like
good one.
what happened and is it
We'd
out
have to
there?
research that
Yeah,
for the episode and
yeah.
find the real story of that. But there's great story. I mean, great stories of stolen pieces that are maybe out there and maybe have not reemerged because now the person that has it knows that there's a lot of attention and interest and value on it. And I mean, it's like owning a piece of fine art. You know, you can't
No,
move these things.
we wrote my old writing partners and I wrote a movie years ago about guys that sort of steal the equivalent of the Mona Lisa, but not exactly the Mona Lisa, but basically it's too good. They steal too good a painting, and
Yeah, can't get
like
rid of it.
you can't get rid of it. That was sort of the joke, if you will. We never quite did anything with it, but I always like that idea. They keep trying to get rid of it, and there's just nothing you can do. But it is interesting in that I do think there's a mix of over the years, and again, I'm not talking about thievery. I guess maybe even just talking about like people taking stuff from the set and kind of holding on
Mhm.
to it and maybe then being a little afraid. But in the last few years, as more things have come to auction, and then the thing that kind of comes with the auction, which is the press about the numbers selling and
Right.
whatnot, and as some bigger name crew guys on some of these movies like Star Wars and whatnot have turned around and sold stuff. And I guess, again, with Star Wars, that George Lucas, has sort of just gone along with it. You know what I mean? Like there have been Phil Tippett auctions and things of that
Right.
nature. I do think crew guys who for a long time maybe were nervous about the idea of selling something, whether privately or in auction, I think they've come around to the notion of they're not going to get in trouble. And again, I'm not talking about thievery. I'm just talking about took something from the set back in the day, or by the way, we're even given something and people don't even remember they were given it. Do you know what I mean? Like here,
Yep.
take it. We don't. Well, who needs it? Because again, no one cared back then. And I guess that's why, on some level, I keep thinking everything will show itself eventually, unless, of course, it got put in the garbage, which is also true. Those
That's always a
stories,
possibility. I
yeah,
mean, there's all stories of,
yeah,
the Thing and the Skip, and very famously the APC, the original armored personnel carrier from Aliens, not the prop, but the actual vehicle that everybody
right,
rode around in. It kind of sat rotting famously on the Pinewood lot for years and years, and people would just drive past it, and be like, "Oh yeah, there's the truck from Aliens," and then one day it was gone. And it's like, "Hey, what happened to the truck?" And it's like, "Oh yeah, we shredded it, basically, like
yeah.
threw it to the baler." And it was like, "What? Why did you do that?" And that would be a major collectible now. But there's and not even that. I mean, that was because the thing was taking up a huge amount of space, and who would keep it and who would want it. But there's all sorts of stories about that. I mean, I talked to somebody that worked on my show that had many years ago pulled a Darth Vader helmet out of a dumpster
Wow.
on a film that he was working on, and one of the originals, not Revenge of the Sith or anything like that.
But by
And
the way, even in the Lucas
couldn't believe
archives,
it.
there are stories from like in the 80s when they like just felt like they had too many of blank and like decided let's just get rid of like the extra land speeder, and you just go, holy crap. And
Yeah.
so that was not stolen, that was not anything, that was an organized culling, I guess.
Yes, that was an
Yeah.
own goal.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
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 But yes, a show in the future, Jacques.
Yes,
So
great
yeah,
question. Thank you, Jack. From this one's from Justin Hold. That's a hard one to do.
you cannot Frenchify that at
You,
all.
Houston,
Houston
make him
old. You
Swedish.
just make the H
Yeah,
silent.
yeah.
Old.
There you go.
Yeah.
Very good. I was hoping you guys could talk about the art of trading props or doing a trade cash deal and how you guys personally approach this aspect of prop collecting. Furthermore, talk about the great trades you've both done in your past. and then there's some other questions we can do in follow up. But yeah, I mean, look, there's all sorts of methods of deal making. I mean, Dave, you do this stuff all the time, probably more often than I have in terms of private deals. Uh, it's about deciding what the value of the piece is that whoever wants, and then putting a value on it. And then if there's a cash element to the deal, that's easy because that's based on the value that decided the thing is worth. And if there's a trade element, then you have to also value the other pieces that are going in the trade and say what they're worth. So if we're, if you're coming after a $50,000 item and you have $20,000 to spend, then you need to raise $30,000 of value, meaning you need to come forward with, stuff that's worth, 30K. And sometimes that's one piece, sometimes it's two pieces, sometimes it's five pieces that the other person feels like they can turn around and put into auction and maybe, turn even, better turnaround on it. There's all sorts of different things they have to do, but that's, it's the haggling and deal making of being in this hobby. And that it is a little bit, shooting from the hip, but that's kind of what makes it interesting and fun.
Yeah, for me, I find it's like, what is the origin of the trade? And so there definitely have been some times where it is a trade. It is, you know, hey, I have this, you like it more, you have that, I like it more, let's do a trade. And I'm not sure I've done that often in the prop world. I've definitely done
Have you,
that in the comic art
like a
world.
straight up trade, like I will
Yeah,
give
just a
you
straight up
this and
trade,
get, yeah.
or maybe
Okay.
it's not fully straight up, but it is the kind of thing of like, I've always loved that piece. You like this piece. Let's do a trade, and then we kind of realized like, oh, I guess I owe you a little more. I'll throw something in or something. But ultimately, it was really about two pieces that we each liked more in the other person's collection. Again, this is a comic art example, so it may not be a perfect example. I may have talked a little bit about this, but with one of our guests, Gus Lopez, about, I guess now at this point now it's over a year ago, he had always had, I had seen pictures of a display that he had of various extra C3PO pieces. And I had been looking for a very long time for eyes, not the eyes, but the rings for the eyes of my C3PO helmet. Because if you remember, it had been reused. A Star Wars C3PO helmet had been reused in Watto's junkyard in the first prequel, whatever,
Yep.
Phantom Menace is what I got. I love that I can't even remember those titles or our email. But anyway, those, one is good, one is not so good.
That's Phantom
And so
Menace at
yeah.
gmail.com.
Exactly. And they had these sort of newer C3PO eyes on it, even though it was the old helmet. And so for years, I've been trying to find eyes. So, long story short, at some point or another, I knew that Gus had actually gotten a different helmet that had eyes. And so I wrote him to say, hey, are the extra eyes now possibly in play because you don't need them? And he said, oh, I hadn't thought of it, but yes, that would be very possible. So then I kind of came around knowing that he'd be more interested in trade than cash. And again, this is what we're sort of talking about. And I had a Ralph McQuarrie pencil Christmas drawing from one of the, I can't remember, I think it was from a card, because McQuarrie did the Christmas card art for years, and Gus has a Christmas card McQuarrie art collection, both of the cards themselves, but also of various McQuarrie sketches that went into the cards. And I knew that that would be something of interest to him, and for me, it was something that was definitely an extra piece. And so that was the basis of a deal that was again, not a perfectly straight up trade. Ended up getting some other stuff in there, but ultimately a trade that made a lot of sense, because what it really was about was I wanted those eyes, and I knew he would like the Christmas thing. And so, like I said, the deal ended up getting a little bit bigger because we ended up both adding some stuff, but that was the basics of it, and it worked. I've done other deals where, I guess what I'll say is, somebody sort of started out wanting cash. I guess I've talked a little bit about this. There was a light. The way I got my lightsaber was to basically, a guy had a piece that was for sale, but was trying to find something for his collection, and I ended up giving up good stuff that I didn't necessarily want to give up, but I gave it up for the lightsaber. And so the trade that I dug into, I think ended up making the difference, for lack of a better word, because I gave up better trade than anybody else was willing to give up, and therefore that's how I won the deal, I guess. I didn't necessarily know I was trying to win it. I was just trying to offer stuff that the guy wanted. I'll
Yeah.
go the other way for 3 seconds, which was recently. I was working on a deal with a guy. I won't get into the specifics till I can make it more public, where he had a Star Wars piece I wanted and was sort of, hemming a little bit about whether he should sell and what the price to put on it. And he was asking me about a Star Wars piece in my collection. And ultimately, it was not a major piece in my collection. It was pieces of a Pyro X-wing, but I do like it, and it's the closest thing, obviously, that I have to an X-wing. They're the blown-up pieces. I have a sort of a piece of a fuselage and two wings of a blown-up X-wing.
Yeah, those are
Um,
great.
and at the moment, that's about as close as you can get. So it is what it is. And he
I have the
wanted it.
explosion.
There you go. There you go. Exactly.
Yeah.
And he wanted it. And I guess I was sort of thinking about it, but not loving it, and ultimately decided I did not want to give it up. And I didn't know if that was going to kind of basically sour the deal. And ultimately I said, I don't want to give this up. Is there a cash number we can do this at? And ultimately he was like, if you can do this, we can have a cash deal. And I went with that over giving up something that I did not want to trade off. So those are kind of some examples from my sort of life of, there are times where you don't want to do a trade, and there are some times where, whether you know it or not, the trade is the only way to get it done. And like it's again, there's no, Lord knows there is no pattern to it. I'll tell you that. It just
Yeah, I mean,
happens. Yeah.
I have a bunch of less exciting stories, I guess, but there was one that recently last year we had talked about it a little bit. I was chasing these the Dallas Captain Dallas spacesuit gloves from my alien costume, which I've been
Yes.
working on making more kind of more original as I went along. And I had a set of replica gloves on it, and I knew where the original gloves were, and they were specific to that costume because they're red. So he was the only one that had these red hockey gloves, and I knew where a set was, and I knew this collector. They all literally all the collector had from that costume was the gloves. So it just felt like low hanging fruit. It felt like that's a thing where you can get those out of there because at the very least, if he's a big Alien fan, something better will come along Alien. The reason I want those so much is because I have the rest of the costume.
Right.
That's what
They're
makes them
super
important to
important to
me.
you.
Yes, but maybe less so to him. But it was like 2 years of talking, and he wanted trade, and he wanted trade specific to that film. And Alien is a really hard film to find stuff from, especially stuff in the value range of a set of gloves. And I was just really struggling to find a piece that was a fair trade. So I kept going back and forth, and things would come up, and I would pitch them, and it's like, this thing is an auction. If I go and win it, will you guarantee me, like, if I just win this thing, that you'll give me the gloves? And it was never the right piece, never the right time. And at the end, I just ended up doubling the original offer that I had made to him, which I knew he chewed on and considered. So at the end, I just decided to go kind of over the top with this thing that he couldn't say no to, or at least hopefully he couldn't, because then otherwise I'd be
Right.
back in a year doubling that offer again. But thankfully, I think at that point he had heard enough from me. He knew I was trying to complete my costume. He knew, I think he felt the collector pangs went in him, and he knew that I was trying to put this thing back together. And I think he took the offer.
Right.
So that was
I'm not a
good
big
end.
fan of buy this thing in auction for me. I got to be honest. That has come
I
up.
know.
Yeah.
I know.
Because I feel like it's always never, it's never a win-win, in the sense of, if you buy it and get the bargain of a lifetime, like somehow let's say you get it for $5. I'm making
Right.
this up. I think it sort of, in a weird way, pisses off the person, and
Yep.
they don't want that deal that they feel like they could have simply bought it themselves for $5. Like, they're telling you to get it because their assumption is it's going to go for a very high value.
Yeah, they don't
of
want to
some
have to bid
sort.
on it.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And then if it doesn't, I think it sours the deal. And then obviously on the flip side, if you agree to it and it goes crazy, and it can sour it for yourself. But I do worry always about that other side of things. I have found, like I said, in the years, you get to know your fellow collector, things that you have that they want, or the areas that they collect on. And there are things you can find, but at the same time, I also don't like necessarily building a trade war chest of like, I'm going to find all these
No.
alien pieces to trade to Ryan. Ugh, it just seems like that's just
No.
dangerous. Like I said, with some of the deals I've done, I've been lucky enough to either have things or be willing to part with things that make the deal working. But I do get a little nervous about sort of going out and finding stuff for trading later without a deal in place. So anyway, wherever that
Yeah.
fits in. Yeah.
Although I would say that yes, but if doing what we do, things come along,
Oh,
sometimes
finding something that's
a
just
collection comes up.
yeah, buying something because you like it and you think to yourself, I like this, but also maybe someone will want it, is different
Yes.
than me buying something and going, I think
Expressly to
Ryan
trade.
likes this. I
Right.
can use this later to maybe get his
Screw
alien
'em.
suit out of
Yeah.
him. Yeah, or
Right.
something like that. That I guess that's the part I don't like. So somewhere in there
Yes.
is an answer. Um More from this guy?
Yeah, let's this is from Justin Hold still. Would also like to hear about you how you keep yourself disciplined through the year. If you have your eyes on prizes that are ways out in auctions, or hopes that there will be things in auctions that you're going to want, especially things that come up with come up unexpectedly that interest you. Do you have the discipline to walk away and stay strong, or do you cave? And I think we've talked about that a lot. I mean, it's about pacing yourself throughout the year and knowing when the thing sets off all the alarm bells in your head, when it's put in front of you, whether it's an auction catalog or a private offer or whatever. You have to you have to jump on the opportunity when it's there, because it may never come around again. But you also have to know your limit and know, I was talking about that Frazetta piece. The alarm bells went off in my head when I saw it in auction. I really wanted it, but I also know that there's other better stuff out there. So
Right, that
I
might
set
be
myself a
coming. Yeah.
limit, and then I went for it, but I stayed disciplined. So I didn't end up breaking the bank or breaking my, going double what I wanted to pay for it at the end, just to have it. Knowing that there's other big auctions coming around this year, and that there's going to be other stuff that I'm probably going to want more. But it's all, you can't see the future. You can only see into the past, and you just never know. So it's about, maintaining discipline, and also just I think developing a sense of when it's time to kind of, put logic aside and go all in after something. And I think, the experienced collector just develops that sense over years and years of doing it. What do you
I would
think, Dave?
say anyone who has been listening to the show certainly, hopefully, can benefit and enjoy us as I don't know what the word is, as living examples of discipline and lack of discipline. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So learn from us. Yes, exactly.
There you go. um and then Justin also asks about
This guy's got a
auction
lot of
value
time on his
versus.
hands. Justin,
Yes. Yeah, I
very,
like this though.
yeah.
He's got lots of questions. Our take on auction sale value versus private sale value. So he says, if a Thor hammer sells at auction for $70,000, is that hammer you own now worth $70K? And that's it depends kind of question. I think sometimes yes, it certainly will help to set the value of the next thing that goes. But a lot of times, what you'll see happen is Thor goes for $70K, and then the next person who has one then wants more for it, knowing that if you wait around for the next auction or whatever, the market is going to improve. A bunch of people are going to be drawn to it, like, sharks to a chum bucket.
Right, you don't have a collection if you don't have a Thor hammer. And
Yes,
sometimes
exactly.
they're right. Sometimes they are
Right.
right. And sometimes the second auction, when there's now only one bidder,
Yeah.
it sells for, $40,000. And the answer is it's not necessarily worth 70, it's not necessarily worth 40, but again, it is a tough thing. I think you need to see
It's
a
worth whatever
pattern.
it's worth on that
Yeah.
day.
Right. I do think you can find patterns to kind of go, I think this is what the value is. And maybe this is a larger point and maybe not what he was asking. Look, I think there's a reason for private sales. One, they're private. I think number two, there are no fees, whether it's seller fees or buyer fees or whatnot. And so you can you can offer something to someone, an amount where they are getting that whole amount, and that may be worth more to them than getting a slightly higher number in an auction where they are paying fees. That's a possibility, certainly, wherever that fits in. And then
Yeah.
obviously, as you get into private deals, I think the privacy is an issue, and perhaps how you're getting paid and the time it's getting paid and all of those things. And I do think, auctions definitely influence private sales. I think private sales are harder to influence auctions because it's hard to kind of for an auction or for people, the whole, again, the nature of private sales is they are private, and definitely word leaks out, but it's harder to go, well, the last three of these, and I've seen people try and do this. I'm putting this in auction. The last three sold in private sales for $50,000. It's just sort of like, did they? Are they? I don't know. We'll see what the price is in auction. And again, there's not necessarily a relation there. So I don't know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It just depends. There's also the character that I encountered after one of the recent auctions or for peace, and a very high low estimate on it that one we talked about on this very podcast. If you enterprising people want to go back and look into the archives, that actually did not sell at the auction, and I went after, as you can do if something doesn't sell for the reserve price or the opening bid or whatever at an auction. You can go and ask the auction house, hey, is there a deal to be made on the side? And I went and asked, thinking that maybe we could find a mutually agreed upon price that's somewhere below the very large opening estimate. And it came back to me that no, actually, the guy wants even more for it now, that it didn't sell at auction. So that number it didn't sell for, he wants even more than that. And I said, okay, great. Thank you very much. So logic doesn't always play into it, I guess, is what we're getting at.
Yes. And there are definitely not exactly rules. Yeah.
Correct.
But you will hear, I mean, look, obviously at the end of the day, the public auctions are a public record. And I do think at some point, sometimes that is our
Yes.
only guide. You know what I mean? And, I think one of the good things is that more and more of the auction houses are making access to their past results a little easier
Correct.
to
You used to have to
find.
write it down in the
Yes,
catalog.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. And by the way, it's funny. Sometimes I've bought old catalogs where you buy them online and, you'll just, as you
The
flip through
notes are
them,
in them.
the handwriting of the notes of what the thing sold for. Um, but that sort of that lifting of any sort of veil of secrecy of an archives is a great thing. It's not the be all end all answer, but it is a great thing. So wherever that fits in too. Yeah.
Yeah, and I, just because Dave loves to talk about whiskey on this show, there are whiskey auctions every month. I participate in them. It will shock nobody. But because that's a little bit more of a commodity, particularly for even certain bottles are super rare. The unicorn bottles, they only come around once every so often, whatever. But bottles that are more popular, that there's more of, because obviously this isn't a thing that like comic art or a movie prop that there's one of or three of. There's hundreds of them, at least when it was first made. You can actually see in the auction listing, it will track the value over the last 10 auctions, and it just shows you a little line plot of
Oh, that's
where this
interesting.
bottle sold. And I've always found that really interesting, but that's a little bit more of a commodity. So but that actually is very predictive of the future price. So you can see ones that are on the upturn, ones that are in the downturn, ones that have really spiked and then they fall. You can kind of see, you can guess how high that bottle is going to go based on that little that little regression chart that you see listed with the auction. So it kind of just depends. And I would imagine that's more of a thing that's relevant if you're like a comic book collector or a Star Wars toy collector or something like that, where
Well, I
there's
think when
more
you
of them.
get into those sort of those graded items that there are multiples of where you can sort of track value. But again, on all of this, the notion of the private sale is a bit of a mystery. And again, part of the reason it is private, which is to say, for every, again, for every Star Wars prop that sells publicly, 5 move privately. And again, those
Yes.
numbers definitely, sometimes they're bigger, sometimes they're smaller. Again, there's no great answer to it. And again, I think people that try and use that, I'm not sure how useful it is, although obviously it's a good thing to know. Anyway,
Yeah. Shall we move on to Jason Holtz
all right.
or Jason?
Does he, Jason Holt? In regrets, I've had a few. Ryan, should we cue the music? Cue the Sinatra. Hold on a
Yeah.
second. Play
There
that.
you
We'll
go.
just play a couple bars.
Yeah.
That's God. I love
We don't
that
want to
song.
get sued.
Yeah. Ryan, you were talking about the hero Berettas from Die Hard, and that one is located in, quote, a black hole collection. Could you please elaborate on what a black hole collection is and possibly provide some examples of pieces that are out of reach because of this type of collecting? Well, yeah, sure. I think we can do that.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, a black hole collection are usually, I mean, and there are some famous ones, but I'll give an example. I think Peter Jackson is a black hole collection. That is a
Yes.
guy, we don't know everything he has, but occasionally when he does interviews about props or kind of walks through his prop collection, you can freeze frame and you see some just amazing stuff. And
That
I
you
think there's a
lost in the last
Yes,
auction.
exactly. And I think there's a pretty good sense that that stuff is not going anywhere. The
Correct.
gravitational pull of
Yes.
the dead supernova that is Peter Jackson is never going to let those out of his black hole collection, and that
Yes. It's
maybe you
the
will see them. Yeah, maybe you'll see
things
them in a
go in,
museum
but they don't
someday.
come
Yeah,
out.
nothing
Yeah.
comes out except in the movie Interstellar, where I don't know, everybody gets
It
old
ends
or
in a
something. Yeah.
bookcase.
Yeah. So yeah, that is to me the perfect prime example. I guess George Lucas is a little bit of that, although obviously like Peter Jackson, a lot of the stuff he has, he made himself and kept. But over the
Right.
years, he's definitely acquired things. He's definitely acquired art and stuff. And I think he's been buying props for the museum. We'll see that one day when that museum opens. But anyway, long story short, I just don't think there's a sense that Peter Jackson or George Lucas at some point are going to be going, oh, yeah, I really need to sell this spacesuit because there's something coming up in the June auction and I need to build up my war chest. So
Yeah.
those are examples of, I guess, famous black hole collections.
Well, Dave, I mean, I would
Yeah.
say I say this with extreme love and admiration, but I would consider, you a bit of a black hole collection. I mean, I know it a lot of what's in there, but I think other people,
Well,
know
thank
some
you.
things you've talked
Yeah.
about, but really more the idea that you really don't sell stuff
I mean,
that
the only thing I will say, and again, I'm not sort of saying I definitely have let things go in terms of, we just were talking about trades, and I've definitely done that.
sure,
And I've let over the years extra pieces go, for a reason. So it's not a never, but I would truly say that the great pieces in my collection are pretty locked down and sort of pretty black
not
holy,
going anywhere.
and that
Yeah,
there's a lot of stuff nobody knows about. Not, and I don't mean in terms of secrecy. I just mean, I just, there's a, I guess, again, with Peter Jackson, whatever, myself and some of these others, there's a certain, there's, the black hole doesn't, it not only refers to, I guess, in some ways, the gravitational pull, but the size. And I guess I do have a very large collection of stuff. And there's
yes. I mean,
definitely a
as
lot
we
of,
established in a
yes,
recent podcast, you don't even know
yes, I don't always
certain
remember. I'm
things
getting better
that
about it. It
that
was
are.
just more about when the things arrived. But yeah,
That's right. Okay.
yeah.
That's right. And
But
which
no,
marine you might
but it
have
is
or don't
definitely a
have.
part of it. I don't know if he'll mind us saying this. I think a lot of times we've had him on. We had him on the show. Our friend Dan Lanigan.
Yes.
That's a black hole collection. I mean that in a wonderful way. This is a compliment. I do think so. That is a collection, and obviously Dan will tell you about his collection and has shown things as he sees fit. But I think there's a sense there that while he does sell things occasionally, that the things he's truly looking for go in there and don't emerge. I'll tell you something funny in the world of comic art collecting, instead of black hole collecting. For a while, a guy I knew was referred to as Galactus, the devourer of worlds. So that was the comic book nerdy version, if you will, that
There you go.
they called him Galactus because he was constantly
That's,
acquiring
I mean,
things. Yeah.
that's wonderful. That's
Yeah.
wonderfully nerdy. Well, very good. So here's another question from Brendan Reese. I don't know how to Frenchify him, but
Brandon.
yeah, there you go. Perfect. You're just saying words with a French
I know.
accent. A bad one, by the way. He asked, I do have a non-prop question. Very good. I do have a non-prop question for Ryan, and was wondering if he's gotten into Premier League or any other league, football or rugby, after being in the UK for all this time. If so, who does he support? Has he come to meet anybody who collects heavily on that end of the sporting world? Thank you, Brendan. I have become a somewhat beleaguered Spurs fan over the time and being here. A very good friend, Tottenham
Hotspurs.
Hotspur. Yep.
And is that because of where you live? I know nothing about this. Is this based on geography or friendship?
No, it's more friendship. Yeah, I was I actually got into the Premier League about 7 or 8 years ago, living in LA, because I just really enjoyed World Cup football, and was sort of disappointed with the quality of the competition level in Major League Soccer, which is the American League.
How
And
dare you?
I
How
know.
dare you, sir?
Sorry. Our our good friend of the podcast, collector friend Tim Laws, is a huge Spurs supporter, and was talking to him about it, and he's like, "Well, no problem. You're a Spurs supporter. You're kissed it." And he knighted me and said, "This is your team." He bought me a hat, and he just said, "This is it." And then he taught me all about the Premier League and how to follow, and showed me how to watch games in the U.S. and all that. So I really got into it, and the team made the Champions League final a few years ago. I mean, they're always good. They sit in the top 4 to 6 teams. They just haven't won the championship in a really long time, and they have some really exciting players at the front. So I've been watching them a lot just because I love American sport as well. It's just very hard to follow out here because of the time difference. So I can watch like the NFL because there are games on at 1 p.m. So it's 5 hours ahead here. Same with like matinee baseball, but I can't follow the NHL because the games start at 7 or 7:30 in the East Coast, and then it's midnight or whatever. It's impossible. So the Premier League's become very enjoyable for me. Collecting wise, I haven't really gotten into the sports memorabilia thing. I think it sort of lives in the same orbit as this, and I certainly would love to have like a Giants helmet from like the great Eli Manning, playoff runs of the last 15 years. I think that would be a thing that I would just love to have, but it's not something I've ever actively pursued. There are people that do it. I know a couple of prop collectors that actually dabble in that world, and it's a thing. And the game they use a lot of the terminology that we use.
I mean, like anything else, the
there's
high
photo
end
matches
definitely
and
is.
screen matches,
You can go very high end.
and it can go.
I was going to say, it will not
crazy.
shock you. I have, as growing up in New York City, a lifelong Yankee fan.
Yes.
I have things. I mean, again, nothing that I think would shake anybody's world. I have autographed baseballs from a lot of just the players on the Yankees that I love. I have team balls from all the various Yankee World Series winning teams of my life, sort of starting in the 70s, with like, Ron Guidry and Reggie Jackson, like that kind of signed balls and stuff like that. And then I
Herman
have
Munson's monkey radiator cap, Dave.
Yeah, exactly. And then I have I have a Derek Jeter, a Derek Jeter jersey. I have a Mariano Rivera pitching mound. I actually have.
Oh, that's cool.
I think from I wrote a movie years ago that has never quite gotten produced, called The Trade, which was about Fritz Peterson and Mike Kekich, who were two pitchers on the Yankees in 1972 or 1973 that swapped wives and families. And I have their uniform. I have a jersey from each of them. And then, by the way, going back to our first question, or one of our early questions, one of my all-time favorite players on the Yankees was a guy they called the Warrior, Paul O'Neill, just a great player in the Yankees in the sort of 90s dynasty. And
and co-star on Seinfeld.
Yes, was Paul in a Seinfeld episode as well, and just really love him. And he's an
had
announcer.
To catch the home run in his hat.
Yep, he's an announcer now on the Yankees. And I just discovered literally this week he's not vaccinated, and he's broadcasting from his living room. And I was just like, oh, fuck me. And
does that affect the value of Paul O'Neill?
I don't know if it affects the value. It really pissed me off. And I'm thinking about, I hate to say, I know, here's what I know. I will not be acquiring any additional Paul O'Neill material, and I may probably get rid of my Paul O'Neill material. I'm sorry, again, so there you go. Yeah, that bothers me on a level I can't speak to.
The jury's really out on the science of vaccination.
Maybe he's right. And everyone else on Earth is, well, I shouldn't say everyone else on Earth.
He's done his own research.
Yeah, that pissed me off. So there you go. There's a good example for you. That just enraged me. So,
bringing it all around.
Yes, exactly. I also, by the way, I bought my seats. I used to be a Yankee season ticket holder. And when they closed the old Yankee Stadium, they gave us the opportunity to buy your seats. And I bought my row of seats that it turns out a lot of other people did it too, and I am now stuck with these things, and I will die with these chairs that I do not want. And if somebody would like them, please email the show and take these things off my hands. Talk about no room to ever display these things. There's no conception of my life that will ever have room to display my 4 Yankee Stadium seats. Anyway, so yeah,
Dave,
that was
I love you, man.
Mistake. Yeah,
just that you are a collector down to the tiniest capillary, running through your veins. It's amazing. It's
Wait, I have a
amazing.
soccer thing too. So I do
Oh,
appreciate
okay.
that. But thank you.
Yeah,
Ready?
yeah.
I do have a soccer thing. I know nothing. I don't pay any attention to any of it. I will tell you one. There is a wonderful, wonderful movie starring Michael Sheen about Brian. I don't even know how to Brian Clough. It's one of these like British names, or that's hard to. It's like CLO. He was like the greatest soccer coach that never was. He was a
Yes, I'm
troubled like
remembering.
alcoholic or something.
I'm
It's
remembering this
called The
movie.
Damn United,
Yes. Okay.
and it is an incredible, incredible movie that made me love soccer, or Premier
About
League, I should
Man
say.
U? Is it about
It's
Manchester?
you check. No, it's the other United, I
Oh,
believe. Yeah, which I didn't even know there was another United
Leeds?
until I watched it. Because I thought only because we did a big Manchester United stuff in Euro Trip. That's and got to work with Vinnie Jones. But anyway, where I was going with all of this is so I got to work with Vinnie Jones on Euro Trip, so that there was that connection. But I love this movie, The Damn United. It's fascinating, and I've actually want to read a book about it. That's how much I liked it. And then somewhere in there, the Glazer family, who own the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, came to Curb Your Enthusiasm. They won like a charity auction where they were allowed to be extras in a scene with Larry. And so we got to meet them and hang with them. And somehow, when all was said and done, they they own a football team they own a British football team as well. And when all was said and done, we the writers on Curb, the writer producers on Curb, I ended up with a signed Wayne Rooney jersey.
Oh,
So
awesome.
I have that in my
There you
collection as
go.
well. I don't believe it's game used. So I have Wayne Rooney memorabilia, one of the
He's a big
only.
deal.
I think he's a
Man,
coach now, I
Man
believe,
U.
if I understand. Yeah, on
Yes.
a lesser team, I believe. But anyway, so there you
Yes.
go. There's everything I know about soccer. And if anyone is interested in my Wayne Rooney jersey, I'm willing to throw that in if you take
Mm.
the chairs. If you,
See,
yeah, and just
see,
to tie it all together, trades are also possible. Yeah, trades are very, very, very possible. Yeah.
for other sports memorabilia that Dave neither wants
That
nor
Yeah,
needs.
bigger, more
Hmm.
obtrusive sports memorabilia. If you have something that is undisplayably large, I'm very interested.
I have the Rangers Zamboni from the 1994
Oh,
Cup run,
perfect.
Dave. Would you be interested in that?
There's a guy on eBay selling. It's been up for months. He's up in Canada, and it is an original store display for Dungeons and Dragons. Like it's a
Oh,
shelving
cool.
unit for Dungeons and Dragons, and
Oh,
it is.
like the sales display.
Yes,
Yeah,
the
cool.
sales
Okay.
display with this cool, it's the shelves and then the backing. And I guess the only thing I can say about it is you could then put all your, like I have all my old modules and stuff, and you could put them in the shelving. But
Yeah.
it is the coolest thing I've ever seen. It takes so much room. And I don't hit, that's why I don't hit the buy button for that reason. Yeah, it's
That's,
unbelievably cool.
that's
And
why
sometimes.
you need your bleak house, Dave, so you can
Yes,
just
I
put all
really
these
do
things.
need. If I had, then you could sit in the Yankee Stadium seats and stare right at the Dungeons and Dragons display.
That's right.
Yeah. Um,
Wonderful. Should we that was kind of the end. I do have a couple more hangers on that I
Go for it if you got one or
appendices
two that
ones.
you want to. Yeah, because
Yeah.
we want to bring this in a tight 3 hours. So go.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So, well, here's a good one. Just a very, very brief from Jay Dunn. There is no French spelling of Jay Dunn. That's a good name. My grandfather always said that he wanted his name to be because he always hated spelling his name for people. He didn't really like to interact with people or talk to them. So he always said he wanted his name to be Ed Hill because if your name was Ed Hill, nobody ever asked you
Right.
how to
How do you
spell
spell
that.
that? Yeah.
So, and there's no French pronunciation of
What
that
do you
either.
get?
But
Condle? Is that the great
yeah, and
mistake?
then also well, talk about
Or
French
EL? Yeah.
pronunciation. Condal, you get all the
Yeah.
all the or K or what. It's just it's silly. And now because we live in a name dystopia, nobody can spell Ryan anymore either
Oh,
because
right. I guess you got a lot of
yes. Well, and also people.
RIAAEYN.
It
Yeah.
used to be people thought my name is Brian, which is why
Right.
same grandfather, Ed Hill grandfather, used to call me Fred because he said, well, if he was just tired of saying no, it's Ryan, not Brian, so he just said his name is Fred. So
Yes.
he called me Freddie for my entire life, and his entire life. Anyway, so this is from Jay Dunn.
If you had a boy, would you have thought about Fred or
I
no?
think I would have. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that was on the list because I thought that would,
That would have been nice. All right.
yeah. It's a good name. Um, so he says, here's a deep dive idea: Luke Skywalker's Return of the Jedi lightsaber. There are many versions: the hero, the stunt, the V2, etc. Would be great to have Brandon Allinger back on, as he owns one of them. I think that's very specific, but I think a lightsaber deep dive is definitely in the future of this podcast. We talked a little bit about Obi-Wan's today. There's just so many, particularly the original trilogy, because they were all kind of kit bash. They were all made from off the shelf parts. I think there's definitely a show in that, and knowing all the different versions and Vader's saber in A New Hope and how it's different in Empire and different in
this
Jedi.
is definitely a show. Maybe not this season, but that's the show.
Yes, for sure. And then this one is definitely for you, Dave. And then I think we can call it on this note. This is from Eric Acevedo. He says, "So don't laugh or ridicule me. Okay, please do. Roast me for my bad taste and poor choices. Give me some of that stuff that my dreams are made of. Ha ha. Anyway, I've always loved Spielberg's 1979 comedy flop 1941. There, I said it. In the Spielberg universe, it's always been my second."
Does he have comedy in quotes?
Say nope. It is. This is all read very straight. It's always been my second favorite of his. I'm not going to say what my favorite is, but I think someone is looking for a baby blue leisure suit from the same film. The 1941 is a mess and has no particular plot line, but the reckless abandonment, political incorrectness, chaos, and anarchy, as well as a solid cast of amazing stars, enthralls me. And quite honestly, I find the whole fucking disaster hilarious. But I digress. I was dreaming that I would love to have the ventriloquist dummy that the character actor legend Eddie Deason has tag along with him during a long night at the Ferris wheel. And another incredible actor who has a penchant for blue leisure suits. I was wondering if either one of you know where it is. I know it is something that I would never own, but I'd love to know what happened to it, and then what he the dummy is doing okay in that little navy suit. And that's from Eric Acevedo. So wow, that's a whole thing to unpack there.
Yeah, I mean, that is a look, obviously. Luckily for 1941, Spielberg also made the movie, whatever that was called, Always. So it may not be Spielberg's worst movie, but it's up there. It's definitely up there. It's just a mess and a terrible movie. But I will say, we are all allowed to like. I mean, I have terrible movies that I'm still somewhat fascinated by, that I do love,
yeah, me too,
and would take something from, and I think that's okay. There's reasons for guilty pleasures. But boy, oh boy, that just seems like he's wasting a lot of his time. I will also say, and this is one of these weird things where...
Have you ever seen the dummy? Has the dummy ever come up for auction? I've never seen it.
My understanding was that the late Eddie Deason was buried with the dummy and wearing the costume. So I guess there's a possibility of getting it, but you would have to break some laws. So,
involves a little work. Depends on what state he was buried in.
I should legally point out that is not true. I have no idea. I don't even know if he's dead. Maybe he's dead.
Yeah,
maybe he's alive.
Please,
I don't know.
Please.
Here's what I do know. I do
grave
not
robbing
know,
on the behalf of our podcast.
I do not know what happened to that, and I can very honestly tell you, I do not care. Who I'll talk about your monkey radiator caps or anything, and Yankee Stadium seats, and just the most obscure prop collecting at the ends of the earth. I'm gonna lay this law down. We're not talking about 1941 on this show anymore ever again. Like it just didn't exist. He took a year off that year. Yeah.
It's the years 1942 to 1945 in Germany.
To our listeners. Yeah. It is the worst thing that ever happened about World War II.
Yes.
As far as I'm concerned.
Yes. I always come back to, if it had not been for 1941, we don't get Raiders. Raiders happened because he was terrified that he had spent all the goodwill from Close Encounters and from Jaws. Fair enough. And Raiders was made on the cheap and on budget because that thing had gone so crazy. So I always look at 1941 with a great smile on my face, because it was made in the year that I was born, and because it led us to Raiders of the Lost Ark. So I'm always grateful for that. But I don't need anything.
That is beautiful. Yeah, that is very beautiful. Yeah, that is madness. But you know what? God bless you, sir, for not collecting things I'm interested in.
Yes. So this is a another ad for our newest and longest running sponsor, propstore.com. The prop store
I
guys
think they want us to really like make it seem like we just happened during a minute to be talking about Prop Store and not say it's
okay.
an ad. But I keep telling them I don't think anyone's going to think we're just stopping the show to talk about it. So I think it's okay if we just say, yeah, this is an ad, but we are going to talk about it for real. I think this is an
But to
okay
be fair,
thing.
I mean, we have in the history of this podcast, we've talked about Prop Store unprompted
Yes,
and
I think
unpaid
we are thumbs
very
up on
often.
Prop Store, which
Yes.
is why we are proud that they are sponsors. And
Yes,
when we
they
do
finally come
talk
along and
about it,
sponsored us.
this is not stuff we're writing. Some of the stuff you can tell when we're reading it, but some of the stuff we're also talking about is just stuff we talk about. So I
Yes.
think we're okay in this area. I think it's all right. But they've got some big news. They have big news this week.
They have a new website, and it's
Oh
actually...
my God, what? I had not heard, Ryan, in this unscripted. No, they've got a new website. It's actually pretty cool.
It's excellent.
It was shocking for me. You get very used to an old website, and then when all of a sudden it didn't look the same, the initial thing, of course, is always just like, no, change bad.
Yeah.
But it's been for me a couple of days, and I do like it. It's pretty great. It's a pretty great reinvent. Everything is clearer and modern looking and just really nice new logo. It looks great, really easy to navigate, and it moves faster too. I don't know if they want me to say that, but it moves faster.
Yes,
the old one was slow. Yeah,
it feels modern and of the time. It also feels very upmarket, and it feels like it's really going to lengths to really position this stuff as as kind of a works of modern popular art, and move them into a higher category, which they're certainly doing with their auction catalogs, which are really second to none, not only in their content but in their presentation. So the website's really great. You guys should check it out. There are a bunch of new features on there. There's a global search feature, so if you're looking to buy something, you can start in by just typing in whatever you're looking for in the search bar. Move your television title.
Yeah, you can type in 1941. No one ever did.
They come back and they just cancel your account. They ban you from the website.
We do not want your business.
Yes.
Thank you, the good people at Prop Store. No, even the good people at Prop Store will sell you a 1941 thing. Yeah, you can type in anything. Their suggestions of Colony or Seinfeld, which actually I think are the last two things you and I would be searching for, actually. But anyway,
correct. Yeah, I might search 1941 first.
I guess I might say I would
buy
Colony, and you might buy Seinfeld. But but I don't think you've got enough Colony stuff, wouldn't you say?
I'm looking for some Paul O'Neill screen worn
anti-vaxxware
from Seinfeld, very specifically.
You
can also use their filtering tools to view your results by category, movie or series, an auction event, or the location of the item.
The other thing that I just absolutely love now is their sold archive. Basically,
Yes.
is a active price guide for props and costumes. This doesn't exist anywhere else, but the Prop Store is right at the forefront of basically coming forward and make it easier for collectors to view their past sales. So the very newly updated sold archive includes not only archive results, but a whole bunch of the stuff that was sold buy it now on the site itself over the years. And so, it's always very hard. We talked about charting the market. This is an actual way to chart the market in terms of active sales on the website, and the big auction sales. And I think it's really one of the great ways, both in terms of clarity, but also just what's the word I'm looking for? It adds a level of just sight to like the collecting world that I think has been missing for me, at least, in a really great way.
Yeah, I mean, that stuff is really important because a lot of times you're relying on somebody's memory or something, and these guys have been around for 25 more years now. So, and I'll have conversations with Brandon and Steven, over drinks. I'll be like, hey, didn't you guys sell that thing years ago? And there's like this sort of vague memory. Sometimes they know, and then sometimes they're like, did that go through us, or was that a profiles thing? Because so much stuff has passed through there. But now that there's an electronic archive, and it's searchable, and by movie and title, and you can see the price the thing sold for. It's really really great resource to have.
I'm not gonna lie, I've gone in myself already, and I just honestly put in the different Star Wars movies, and I just looked through the past sales.
Star Wars, really?
Yeah, no, but I know, big surprise. But for me, it wasn't so much that I was looking for anything in particular, but it was just a really interesting way to just sort of look at the last couple of years, both what is sold, and obviously I'm responsible for buying some of it, but also just to sort of see like, oh yeah, that piece I missed out on that, or I was the underbidder, and just to really like again, a movie I really love to just really look at everything that has been out there over the last X number of years, and it was just a really interesting way to think about both my collection but also what has been in the marketplace. And so I don't know, I love the new feature. I'm really kind of nutso for it. It's
Yeah,
really exciting. Yeah.
and they also have this great notifications feature now, so you can proactively, sort of like eBay would do, like notify you when, for Dave, when Star Wars comes up, when there's a hit for that, or Empire Strikes Back, or whatever specific film you're looking for.
Whichever of the original 3 Star Wars movies you're looking for.
Correct. Yeah, which
You just
Dave
literally
is looking
just
for.
go
Yeah,
log into propstore.com, and you
and
just
send a
create your
1941
yeah,
alert.
exactly. You can create a watch list, which kind of works like the eBay function, really, of like
Mm-hmm.
when these things are. Update requests. So basically, you can sort of say like, hey, here's something you sold in the archives in the past. If you get something like this, either a similar piece or from this movie, I'm looking for something in general from this movie. And email notifications of lots of different sort of settable ways, genres, TV shows, movies, whatever. So if something lands on the website or in an upcoming auction, you can find that out, which is really, again, I just, everything you'd want, and also everything working really fast and really kind of efficiently as a website goes. I really liked it, and really just intuitive as well.
Yeah. So go to propstore.com right now, do some searches on the new website, and find your extraordinary. And be sure to, if you're using the buy it now function, to remember the contest that we told you guys about. So they're running a contest.
It's the Stuff Dreams Are Made Of contest. You get a 10% discount on any buy it now uh, piece on their website. So if you see that 1941 piece you've been dying for, the dummy is there. I think it's on the website right now. It's selling for $4. But basically, there are 2 codes. Dave 10 or Ryan 10. That's DAVE 10 or Ryan RYAN 10, not Fred 10. And basically, you get 10% off. And at the end of the year, we will see who wins. I'm told so far one person has used a code, but I don't know if it was me or you that they used. So this is your opportunity to show how much more popular House of Dragons is by using the Ryan 10 code. And there'll be a winner at the end of the season, parentheses Ryan. And they literally wrote that in here. It says the winner, parentheses Ryan, will be determined based on the total dollars ordered using Ryan's promo code.
It actually matters. It doesn't matter how many little items are bought. It's total dollars sold, which I like as a wrinkle in this contest. I'm very curious to see how this one all goes.
So we might be one of those like NBC shows where it's like we don't have a lot of viewers, but our viewers are very upscale.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
It's the equivalent of the master's degree educated 35-year-old, the male living in Manhattan. So
or a PhD owner who owns his own comic art gallery.
There you go. I mean, you just never know. I also like that we could sway the contest if we're so desperate for attention and love that at the very end of the season we could actually go onto the website and buy the most expensive thing
and enter our own code.
Enter our own code and get a 10% discount just to put it over the top, just to shame the other guy. But we'll see how this sorts out.
Please go use the code right now. Go to propstore.com to place your buy now orders today and find your extraordinary. I'm starting to think Find Your Extraordinary might be their new thing, I think.
You think so?
They keep putting it down, so I'm guessing it's something. So yeah, Find Your Extraordinary at propstore.com. This is not an ad.
Should we play the game, Dave?
Yes. Should we play 1941?
No, I was gonna do because it's a mailbag episode. I was gonna do the Postman by
not You've Got Mail.
Yeah, that's also another good one. Which is great. Any great mail movie? What
are the great mail movies? The Postman. Oh Lord, that is a tough one. Yeah.
I don't even know. How about we just do movie mail? What piece of movie mail would you?
I see where you're going with that one. I like that. That's more interesting. I feel like there's got to be a great like there's got to be like a great like telegram in Citizen Kane that would be very cool to
Yeah.
have. Like I can't put my finger quite on it, but I feel like that's got to exist in there somewhere, which would be kind of cool just to have. I don't know where that one fits. Do you have a piece of movie mail that's jumping
I
out at
mean,
you?
I have a cop out cheat, and then I'll go somewhere else with it. But I have we've talked about it a little bit before, but I have Indiana Jones Grail Diary from Indy 3, and the first time you see
So
that.
when it comes out of the package, because he
Yeah,
mails
but
it
the
to him.
first time you
Okay,
see it, the
yeah.
prop, it and certainly they had unused repeats of that because it's in the brown wrapper with all the stamps on it and the string, and people have actually gone through pains in the replica world to recreate that thing. But certainly, I don't know whether they lived or did not live. There were a bunch of repeats of that were on set for him to unwrap, and that, I mean, that's what it. I mean, that's the MacGuffin that sets off the whole.
No,
The whole.
that's a great piece of movie mail. That is great. And obviously, yeah, maybe, I mean, for all we know, they did wrap the heroes and allow him to unwrap them, but
Yes.
and then maybe they undid it, but maybe there were dummy ones as
Or there were
well. I
dummy
mean,
blank
yeah.
books that
Yeah,
that
exactly.
he opened, and
That they just wrapped up and then
be
whatever. But that would be
interesting.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a cool looking, all those period stamps and whatnot. That is a good piece of movie mail. I'm trying to think if I can think of any other
I also go to,
piece of movie mail. Yep.
I'll serve one up to you. I also go to Harry Potter because I think that again, just what an indicative, if you're talking about a
So
collection
even
in one
owl
piece.
mail counts, is what you're saying. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. I mean, that's, it's all, those were all kind of handwritten, and they're heroes and sort of the stunty ones that just like flew through the mailbox, and the
I have a
celebrities getting
hero one in my
thousands of them.
collection. I
Oh,
kind
do
of picked
you?
that. Yeah, I do. I picked it up
Oh, that's
years
great.
ago, thinking my kids would get a kick out of it someday, and I think they do. But yeah, no, it's a neat piece. And again, the hero ones that had like the actual wax on it and all that kind of stuff, they're really nice as opposed to all those other printed ones. But yeah, no, that's definitely a fun one. Yeah.
If you live in London or visit London, I actually found Mina Lina is right around the corner from where our post offices are
Oh, neat.
for the show, and that's the graphic design team that did all the graphic design for Harry Potter. So their shop is brilliant. I mean, they make like newly illustrated versions of collect
I've read
of
about the store. I was never able to get there, but yeah, I've read about
of
the
like
store.
of public domain stories like The Wizard of Oz and like, Alice in Wonderland and things like that they've illustrated in their very specific style. So you can buy their books in there, but they also have done Harry Potter, and then they also have all this wonderful Harry Potter graphic design, both original and then prints that they've made of their stuff. They have some original props, paper props and things that they made in their shop in the basement, and it's really, really cool. And I'm not a huge Potter guy, but just to see the art of movie making stuff that up close and personal. I took my kids in there; they all loved it. We had a great grand old time.
It is a great both look and design sense of things. I mean, it's just good looking. It really is. Yeah.
This was great fun. I feel like we
thank
really...
you fans for writing in, and please keep those letters coming, because we'll do this again every year perhaps. But please, as always, download us, rate us 5 stars, tell a friend, and you can follow us on social media at Props Podcast on Twitter and Instagram, and I guess also on Facebook now too. We have a Facebook page. So please come and Stuff the
Props
Dreams Are
Podcast.
Made Of Facebook page. You can find us and follow along there as well, and we will interact with all of that stuff. So please do all that, and we'll see you next time. A whole bunch of episodes coming your way. So please enjoy. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.